Hello all. Today we are going to be learning about solving multi-step equations. If you need the notes on solving multi-step equations, please take a look in the description box below. I have attached a link to the slide that has all of the notes. So, the first step we are always going to do is draw a line down the middle. We want to make sure that what we have on the left stays on the left until we decide to start adding stuff back and forth for left and right. So the first thing we're going to do is check for distributive property on the left side, which I do in fact have. So 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times positive 7 is a positive 14. This is still equal to 22 because there's nothing I can do on the right side with distributive property. I check for combining like terms, which I cannot combine 2x and 14 because they do not have identical variables. And on the right side, I also do not have like terms because it is just a 22. So now I'm moving into solving a two-step equation. I'm going to subtract 14 from both sides first, in which I will have 2x equals 8. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 2. This is going to get my variable x by itself and equal to the integer 4. I can double check this if I'd like by plugging in 4 to the original equation and seeing if my left winds up equaling the right side. 4 plus 7 is 11, times 2 is 22. It does in fact check out. So the next question is also solving multi-step, a little bit more involved. These are going to get more and more difficult as we progress. So we're going to start by splitting it down the middle. And I'm going to start by looking at the left side and check for distributive property, which I do have. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 2 is a positive 6. And then I also bring down the plus 6, and it still equals 3. Now I check for combined like terms. This is not combined like terms across both sides of the equal sign. This is simply on one side. So I'm actually going to block off the right side and only look on the left. Negative 3x does not combine with anyone else, but the positive 6 and positive 6 do combine. Together, they're going to make a positive 12. I simply add whatever is there. If it's positive 6 plus 6, awesome, put them together. Negative 6 plus 6, awesome, put them together. 2 negatives, fine, put them together. It's regular math. On the left, I still have negative 3x to bring down, as well as on the right, a 3. Once again, I've wound up with a two-step equation to solve. This is why we do distributive property and combine like terms on one side as well as doing on the other, because eventually we want to make it look like so. I'm going to minus 12 on both sides. I'm left with a negative 3x equals a negative 9. And finally, divide by a negative 3. Since this is multiplication, negative 3 times x. To undo it, I divide by a negative 3. And I'm left with x equals a positive 3. Moving along. Once again, I'm going to split this down the middle and check for distributive property. I do have distributive property before I have this addition. We follow the order of operations. Never do you decide to add these two together and then multiply. No, that's not how this works. We do distributive and ignore the negative 3. We can actually just bring him down to the next line because we're not doing anything with him yet. Instead, we're going to focus on this number and distribute it across the parentheses. Positive 5 times x is a positive 5x, and positive 5 times positive 6 is a positive 30. Bring down the right side. Now I check for combined like terms. Nothing going on the right side, just a lonely number. But on the left, I do have like terms once again. I have like terms with negative 3 and positive 30. In the calculator or by doing mental math, negative 3 plus 30 is a positive 27. But I'm going to bring down that 5x first and then write our positive 27. I can not ignore the positive, but I know that a positive 5x is the same thing as just saying 5x, which is why I left the sign behind, because it is still there, it's just invisible. But I do have this positive 27 that now I have something to do with. I'm going to subtract it from both sides. I'm left with 5x equals 10, and then I divide by 5. And x is equal to 2. Number 4, once again, split it down the middle. Oh no, my negative 13's on the left. Everything else we've done on the left, that obviously means I can't do the same thing on the right. No, of course you can. Negative 13 equaling this side is the same as having this side equal negative 13. It doesn't matter what side you're on, you're still going to perform the same steps. So on the left, I do not have distributive property or combined like terms because it's just negative 13. But on the right, I do have those things to do. So I'm going to start with my distributive property. Now keep in mind, I'm only going to distribute the 5 to 1 and then the 5 to 4x, not negative 2. He's not included in my parentheses, so we're just going to keep him for the end. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times positive 4x is a positive 20x. And of course, bring down that negative 2x. Same thing with bringing down negative 13. Once again, on the right side, I just did distributive property. Now I'm going to check for combined like terms. 20x minus 2x is possible. They are like terms on the same side of the equation. So I'm left with 5 plus 18x. Now, my x is on the right side, and that's who I'm trying to isolate. So in this case, I'm going to be subtracting 5 from both sides because I want x to be left by itself. So I'm going to minus 5 on both sides. I'm left with negative 18 equals 18x. And last but not least, this is 18 times x, so I'm going to divide by 18 on both sides. Negative 1 equals x, or because it's an equal sign, I can simply flip it around and say that x is equal to negative 1. All right, number 5. So now we're getting a little bit more complicated. You'll actually notice that we have variables on both sides of the equal sign, and we're going to see what happens when we get to that step. First things first, on the left side, if I'm looking here, I have distributive property and then probably a combined like terms with this positive 5, but let's focus just on distributive first. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 5x is plus 40x. And then we bring down the 5. I'm going to copy the right side as well because we actually cannot do anything to simplify the right side of the equation. We do not have distributive property, and we cannot combine 13 and 5x. They do not have identical variables, so we cannot combine. So I will leave it as the expression 13 plus 5x. I just did distributive. Now I'm going to continue by checking for combined like terms on the left side. On the left, 8 combines with 5. 40x does not combine with anyone, so I'm just going to write him down. And then 8 plus 5 is 13. So, now what? Well, our next step is I have variables both on the right and left side. So I'm going to always look at the variable on the right side and say, you know what, I don't want him on the right side anymore. How can I possibly get him to the other? Well, using the property of equality. I'm adding this 5x on the right side. So the inverse would be to subtract 5x. I'm allowed to do this because I am maintaining balance. I'm taking 5x's away from the right, so I'm allowed to take 5x's away from the left. 40 minus 5x is 35x. And of course, I bring down the rest of the information. Now I'm going to subtract 13 from both sides because of course x is now going to be by himself on the left. He does not have anybody on the right anymore, so I'm going to continue moving things away by subtracting 13. 35x equals 13 minus 13 is 0. which if you are a student in my class, you probably know what I was about to say, and divide by 35 on both sides. X is still equal to 0 because 0 divided by a number is still 0. Finally, we have number 6. Again, a little bit more complicated, but we have followed the same steps repeatedly. Distributive property, combine like terms. Then we worry about terms on both sides or numbers on both sides. So, going to split this down the middle. Start with the left side. I have distributive property. Awesome. Distribute. 5 times 2x is 10x. 5 times 6 is 30. I'll check for combined like terms right away. I do not have any, so I'm not going to be returning to the left side until I finish simplifying the right. So I'm going to move over to the right side. Here I have distributive property again. Negative 4 times negative 5 is a positive 20. Negative 4 times negative 2x is a positive 8x. And I bring down my 3x. I do, in fact, have like terms on the right. I have 8x and 3x. So this becomes 20 plus 11x. I'm going to copy down the left side so we're all on the same line. Once again, I have two sides of the equation, and I have variables on both sides. So I'm going to look at this 11x and figure out how can I make a 0 for the x's on the right by doing the inverse. I'm going to subtract 11x on both sides. 10 minus 11x is a negative 1x plus 30 equals 20. I'm going to continue. I want to get rid of my positive 30 on the left, so I will do the inverse by subtracting 30. Negative 1x is equal to negative 10. And last but not least, I need to divide both sides by a negative 1. So negative 10 divided by negative 1 is a positive 10. And we have finished our assignment. If you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to go back to the beginning, re-watch this entire video, or ask your teacher in class. Okay, thanks. Bye.